Hey everyone, welcome to Wildlife Inspired. I'm your host, Scott Keys, and this is your channel for photography, for wildlife, and for wildlife photography. Today I'm doing a product review on fluid heads, specifically the Leofoto BV-15. Had a few requests for this one. I'm going to tell you all about it right after this. I mentioned that today we'll be looking at this BV-15 fluid head by Leofoto. This is a little bit of a transitional fluid head for them. By that I mean it sits bigger and a little bit more expensive than some of their very small travel-sized heads, and it's a little bit smaller than some of their bigger, more robust fluid heads like the one I've got over here. It also sits in the middle of those price points. I'm going to just quickly flash up some of the units that Leofoto sells as I'm referencing price and show you the difference in size. So I've already done a review on this. This is the BV-10 fluid head. And while this is a capable fluid head for travel, it doesn't really support large weighted lenses. So for this, I kind of estimate under 6 pounds is probably the best use case for something like this. The video fluid heads we're going to talk about today are going to be capable of handling larger lenses. So my setup over here is going to be right around 12 pounds. That's what we're going to reference in this video. And to get specific with this, we're going to compare it. So I'm actually going to show you my standard everyday. We'll use this as the benchmark, and then we're going to get back to the BV-15. As I'm switching this around, I just want to talk about some of the things that I look for when looking at fluid heads. As a wildlife photographer, I like things that are ARCA compatible. So many fluid heads are designed for videography, and the head unit down here or the clamp is going to support a different type of base. Generally, they're referred to as like a Manfrotto base. These ARCA Swiss bases are generally used by photographers, so I always look for that. Some of the things I'm concerned about, primarily, these would be my primary focuses. One, cost, because that's everybody's focus. I'm also looking at weight, durability. So how well is this thing built? How much can it support? How fluid the movement is. And then another primary concern for me is going to be this idea of counterbalance. I'll mention that a little bit more specifically in just a minute. There are some other factors here. So things like how well does the variable control work? How well does it lock out? And does it carry some extra things like a bubble level? So they will all have handles, but you know, some of these accessories, maybe on the secondary side, those are some of the things I look at. But I really do look at that first group, and in that group I put counterbalance. So I'm going to explain what counterbalance is, and I'm going to use my BV-20, which is my everyday fluid head, to show you what this means. A counterbalance is a system that holds the lens in place and pulls it back in. So what I want you to think of is a spring that always wants to pull it back into the neutral position. So if it's leaning down and I let go, the spring is going to pull it back or provide the perfect amount of tension so that it balances in one spot. Now this fluid head, like many, especially when you get into higher price points, this has an adjustable counterbalance. So if I turn this to 0, it takes the counterbalance off, and I just got to be pretty careful with this now, as if I let this go, it'll just flop. So there's no counterbalance. So that spring that I mentioned is pretty much disengaged at this point. This has 3 settings after that, so I can put it on 1. And when I put it on 1, it gives it a little bit of resistance. So if I let go, see how it's going down slower. It's not quite strong enough to pull this heavy setup back into place. If I put it on 2, on this heavier spring now, look at it start to pull it back into place. So even on an 11 or 12 pound setup, it starts to pull it in place. And 3 would allow it even more. So I could put it on 3 and it's very strong. You can see it almost snaps it back into place. And we can combine that counterbalance with the drag for this system. And if we get it just right on this BV-20, I can point it up and it'll stay fairly locked in. I don't have it locked. This is the lock button down here. I don't have it locked in, but it stays pretty good. So I've got enough resistance that I can shoot and I can film my video. And by the way, not only are these great for video, as an everyday wildlife photographer, I often find myself just putting this on my tripod and taking it out in the field. These fluid heads tend to be a little bit heavier. So I'm going to put some of these numbers and statistics up in just a minute, but this particular fluid head is about 4.5 pounds. Typical for fluid heads is 4 to 6 pounds, depending on how robust it is. All right, so this is my BV-20. This is the one I've been using every day. I'm going to take this system off. I'm going to bring my other one back, and now I'm going to go over some of the features of this BV-15 and show you where it's different and where it has some advantages, but also some disadvantages. Now, as I'm putting this on, I want to point out one of the first differences that you're going to see is on my BV-20, I'm going to show you when I mount and dismount the foot and engage that, there's a little safety feature on that. You have to push a button to disengage it or take it off. The BV-15 does not have that feature, but I've had no issues with this clamp in general, but it's just more of a standard clamp here. Now, one of the things about this is I do want to make sure that I get this centered, and this goes with any piece of equipment. I want to see if this is pretty well balanced forward and backwards, and actually it looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this out. You'll see a lockout mechanism here, and then on the bottom we've got that Fluid drag control down here. I can tighten it up, so it's going to be pretty stiff now, or I can loosen it. And I will tell you, most of these horizontal drag controls, they feel very similar. So I've used a lot of these Fluid heads. When you get into the very, very high-end ones, you can feel the difference. When you get down into this price point, they generally feel very, very similar, regardless of brand. When you get into these lower price points, something like these travel heads, you can tell a difference in how smooth that is. And this is one of the things I look for. So I'm looking to see how smooth is this and how nice does this feel on my hand. And it feels pretty good. I will say the BV-20 might be a little bit smoother, but I don't think most people are going to see that as a difference. Where we generally see the difference is actually in the tilt. It's a little bit easier to feel. If you've ever used Fluid heads, you might have noticed this as well. Now, the control on this side is over here. So I'm going to turn this down. I'm going to unlock the head, and okay, we're going to move it up and down, and I'm going to bring it back into position. I just wanted to show you that control knob, and I'm just going to move it. I'm going to adjust it all the way down, so now it's really smooth. It's really loose. It might be a little too loose. I'll show you why. And as I add drag to that, it's going to feel a little bit smoother. Now, again, most people blindfolded wouldn't be able to tell the difference in these two. In fact, with most Fluid heads in this price point, there's not going to be a significant difference. I did not notice anything about this that I would say like not good enough. It's a little bit tighter on the horizontal. The tilting felt about the same. Here's the big, big, big difference. And this is where the price point comes in, and this is where everything starts to matter. When I take this off, that drag control on the tilt off, there isn't enough counterbalance for my heavy lens. It will support it. So you'll see when I give you the ratings for how much this supports, it's actually 22 pounds. So an 11-pound setup is no problem. I'm going to let this go and just be careful. All right, you could see on a lighter tripod, and I did this intentionally with a smaller tripod, it's just going to kind of flop. All right, so that is not great. That is with no tension. Now, if I put tension on it, and I'm going to ratchet up this drag control, it will stay fairly still. I can still move it, but there's enough drag on this that it stays in one place. Now, it's pretty stiff in terms of the drag. So if I was actually shooting or doing some videography, I would want it a little bit looser than that. I would probably say somewhere in the middle, but when it's in the middle, it doesn't have enough support to keep it in one place. And that counterbalance, unlike the BV-20, is enough. This is the primary difference in these two. There's some other little things up here, but I want to put up a chart real quick just to kind of show you where we're at with these two. And we'll go through the price point. You could see the weight. This is about 1.5 pounds lighter than the BV-20. The base is very similar in size. It's a little bit narrower, and the height is very close. Here's the big difference. You get down into these next couple features. Variable drags, yes, both of them have variable drags, but this one does not have a variable counterbalance, which means you're locked into one counterbalance, no matter what size lens you use. If I put my 70 to 200, weighs 5 pounds, this isn't going to be a problem. Even if I take that drag and lower it down, it's going to be pretty stable. When I get a heavier setup, that's when I have to start looking out for this. The rest of the stuff is pretty easy. I have one I'm going to show you real life. Stick around because you're going to find this one really interesting. There was one other primary difference that I did not expect to be a difference at all, and that's when I looked at the creep of the lens. I'll explain what that is to you in just a minute. So overall thoughts. Is that counterbalance a concern? Well, if I was using this as a travel setup, I think I could get around it. I use this in the field quite a bit, and here's how I got around this. I'm going to turn it this way so you can see it. What I would do is I would turn this drag kind of to the max. And as I was just standing there, I was good, right? The drag's all the way up. I'm not locked out. I'm not using the lockout to do this. That's just the drag. And then if I had action, I would pull it back and I was right in position to where I wanted to be. The only thing is so I was kind of using this as like a lockout. So I would turn it down and then I would be ready to go. But even if something happened and I didn't adjust it, I could still move it. Now, why do that instead of using a lockout? Well, if I use the lockout, truly use the lockout, and something happens, it's locked, I can't move it. So I use that drag control as a way to kind of lock it out and make up for the fact that it didn't really have a strong enough counterbalance. Would I recommend it for a heavy lens? Look at the price points and make that decision for yourself. For me, if I'm out in the field and I'm kind of set up and I'm not hiking a long distance and I'm not traveling, the BV-20 just makes a little bit more sense. It's just got a couple more features that counterbalance could be a big deal with a heavy setup. If you got a lighter setup, I wouldn't worry as much about it. All right, one last thing, then I'm gonna wrap this review up, is this idea of creep. So what is creep? Let me just explain what this is. Then I'm gonna take a video and actually show you exactly how this lens performs versus the BV-20. Creep is when I lock this into one place, or I'm pointing, and then I wanna take these lockouts over here, and I'll just switch hands. I lock that one out, and then over here, I lock that out. Does the lens move? I noticed something interesting about this. I'm going to do it here, and then I'm going to show you. I actually recorded it, and you could see it through the lens. I want you to watch this lens very carefully. If it creeps, you may actually see it in this video. So here's the first one. Nothing. Here's the second one, and I'm going to try not to move it with my hands. There. You may have picked it up on camera. Now, let me show you the BV-20 first. All right, so this is a real video. I'm gonna put the screen up and I'm gonna sync it to me tightening these knobs and watch what happens. It is almost imperceptible. You can sort of see it, like you can see me bump it with my hand. You can see a little camera shake there. By the way, I took the vibration reduction off of these just to get it really, really apples to apples. So almost zero creep when I locked that out. Now let's look at this BV-15 and notice the difference. Watch this horizontal creep. Pretty significant. Like it really, and I thought, wow, maybe that was something, I didn't think it creeped that much. And here's a vertical, no problem. The vertical did not move up and down at all. But when I went back to that horizontal, you could see, when it's synced up with my fingers, you can see exactly when I'm doing it, and you can see exactly the motion in that lens. So, is creep a big deal? For me, it's actually, I used to not even include it in videos. A couple people mentioned it to me and said like, hey, I wish you'd talk about that a little bit. So I said, it's an easy one to discuss and it's easy to show. So I'm gonna start doing that with my gimbal and Fluid reviews. But so is that creep a really big deal for me? It's actually not a huge thing for me. I have had people in the past ask me about that when I'm doing my reviews. So I thought I'd start throwing it in. And I have noticed some creep on different gimbal systems and these Fluid heads. I was a little bit surprised with this one. I didn't think it would be as noticeable. Again, the BV-20 kind of rock solid. The BV-15, good on the tilt, but it definitely wandered when I tightened that horizontal lockup. So if it's a big deal for you, it's just something to consider. Maybe you're on the fence and you're like, okay, that sways me one way or another. I think what's really gonna sway people between the 15 and the 20 is the $100 difference in cost. And remember, I have a 20% coupon. It's actually only an $80 difference in cost. More importantly is the weight. By taking off that counterbalance, they're lowering the price and the weight of the system. So now you've got a 3-pound Fluid head as opposed to a 4.5-pound Fluid head. That's the primary difference. So both of them I liked. I used this one in the field. I didn't have any structural problems with it. It seems like the construction's good, just as all of the other Leofoto products I have ever owned have been very, very solid. But I would say for me personally, if I'm not hiking, take a look at the 20. If you're worried about weight and you want to save a few dollars, I don't think you have any problem. By the way, it is a much better Fluid head than the BV-5 and 10. These are really just for travel. You can use these, but for a heavier setup, I'd be a little bit reluctant to use these. I did a video on the 5 and 10, so if you haven't seen that, I'll put a thumbnail up here and you can check that out later. So that's my overall thoughts on the BV-15. I don't think you can really go wrong for the price on this one. But again, if you're worried about that counterbalance, there may be some better options out there. Hopefully you like this review. Check down in the comments. I will put my discount code down there. So if you're interested in any of the Leofoto products here, whether it's the tripod legs or these fluid heads, I've done videos on all of this stuff. So I'll put some links down to everything that you saw in this video down below. And that's all I got for you for today's video. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, I hope we can continue to find inspiration in wildlife together.